We're doing a Florida segment, and not just a Florida segment, but a climate change segment. Now, a lot of you guys are most certainly familiar with a classic left-wing, like, breadtube internet meme. Comes from H-Bomber Guy. In response to Ben Shapiro claiming that if climate change is really real and the coast of Florida and other more, sea level lying, highly populated regions are going to experience flooding, then those people can just sell their houses and move. And of course, that sounds like a relatively sound point to your average 14-year-old libertarian Ben Shapiro fan, but H-Bomber Guy shattered the perspective of many kids like that simply by pointing out a quote that is now a meme. Sell their houses to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman? The matter is that most conservatives, most, climate change deniers even, don't even deny that climate change isn't real anymore. It's usually a mix of two different types of soft climate change denial. On one hand, you've got those that are huffing the copium, claiming that we're coming out of a small ice age, and this is all part of a natural warming period that humans are having no real impact in, or if we are, it's a very minimal impact, and if it isn't, then we can't really make a big deal about it anyway, or make a difference anyway, we shouldn't play God. And on the other hand, you've got the people who kind of engage in what I call, South Park climate change, modern South Park climate change. For those that aren't aware, South Park was one of the most, prominent climate change denying mainstream media sources when climate change started to be quite frequently discussed. I believe it was during, the 2000... fuck it. It's before my time, so I'm not going to get the year right. But the Gore v. Bush election is what it was doing commentary on, and the fact that Al Gore had a big history of advocating for the climate, and many called him a climate alarmist, saying that his attention that he brought to climate change was fear-mongering he was using to try to get himself elected. 2001 to current, yes, okay. And of course, that led to the sort of tongue-in-cheek man-bear-pig character, which sort of represented the, cryptid, made-up cryptid that is meant, which is the made-up cryptid that's meant to represent climate change. And man-bear-pig is fake. And that's, the whole point, is that, climate change is man-bear-pig, and man-bear-pig doesn't exist, and Al Gore is annoying and stupid and wants attention. More recently, by that I mean, 20 years later, they made an episode that was an apology episode, quote unquote, where they say, oh wait, Man-Bear-Pig is real and he's a problem. And they brought up Man-Bear-Pig a few times more recently, but they still frame climate activists and even Al Gore himself as kind of a cunt, as kind of cunts that are so disagreeable in their behavior and personalities and presentation that it doesn't matter if they were right all along, that we should continue to double down on not caring about the climate and pissing them off and triggering them because they're not very likable. And that's kind of the second brand of climate change denial. I hate these damn annoying protesters. I don't care if climate change is real. I don't want to drink through paper straws. I don't want to have low flow whatever. I don't want to recycle, to sift through my garbage and sort it to recycle. And I don't want to do anything to care about climate change, and certainly not give any ground to these annoying fucks, as they would say. Caring about anything is dumb, yeah. Now, the funny thing is, most of the places that are most strongly conservative are actually hard right-leaning, areas on the water. Not just on the water, but they're extremely flat areas. We're talking places like Florida, or Mississippi, or even Louisiana, or not, less so Mississippi. Well, no, Mississippi has a fair amount of flooding issues when it comes to rivers, to be fair. Yeah, Mississippi has had problems with hurricanes and flooding. These are areas that are pretty flat, and they have a lot of water and swamps, and they're close to the coast, and it means that as sea levels rise, a lot of literally trillions of dollars of property damage will be done. People will be displaced, and it will be catastrophic for America and the world as a whole. But for a long time, it's been it's coming. It's coming. Trust me, it's coming. It's not coming anymore, guys. It's happening. As in, right now. Like, it's happening. Here's a video from 1 year ago from Tampa Bay 10, one of the local news stations in Florida. I assure you it's real. I've lived in Florida. About a Pinellas County beach that likely won't be getting the sand it desperately needs. Why, pray tell, does it need the sand, do you think? Let's find out.
Welcome back to Brightside. It is National Beach Day, something we celebrate very often here in Tampa Bay. Pretty much every day, right?
But guess what? A debate continues over a beach nourishment project in Pinellas County. It's on hold now.
10 Tampa Bay's Jenny Dean joining us live from Sunset Beach this morning with more on the issue and why it's so important to...
It's not a matter of it's coming. It's a matter of there are literally importing sand to the beaches on the coast of Florida around Tampa to rebuild the beach because every storm, every rainy day, hell, probably every low tide washes so much sediment out to sea. I have no doubt the amount of trawling and what's the like cruise ships that come out of Tampa Bay, et cetera, have wrecked any coral reef life. The amount of ocean temperature rising. The Tampa Bay got up into like the 90s, the low 90s in Fahrenheit apparently at one point. The water did, which kills everything pretty much. There's no coral reefs or natural barriers to prevent massive turbidity from like washing everything out to sea. So these beaches are just going to erode away. And when you look at this video, you're going to see how close that waterfront property is to the water already. It like when the hurricanes come, these beachfront towns are already under knee-deep water at like as it is. It's only getting worse and more frequent. It used to be a thing that happened every 5 years when I was a kid. Now it's a thing happening every couple years, and it's getting to be yearly, if not multiple times a year, through most of Florida and the like southeast of America.
Replenish this sand out on our beaches. Hey, Jenny.
Hey, good morning, guys. Here at Sunset Beach, this particular area is set to be renourished next year, which is the good news. But you can see how badly it's needed. I mean, just look at the drop-off here from the sand.
This is what where the beach was when I was a kid, more likely than not. It would have gently sloped down towards the water, as you'd expect, for quite some time, too. The beach would have probably been roughly 3/4 to a mile wide. Realistically, beaches in Florida and like in California especially can be really wide. But you can see the tide regularly comes up to here and it's just eating away at it. Just eating away. And you can see the lights from the houses. And you can tell they're not far away, nor are they much higher than this. Like, this is the top floor of a tall building. It's on level with this. And it's getting eaten away at. Like, it's going to fall into the ocean. Like, it's going to landslide in eventually.
Sand, and it really shouldn't be quite that steep. Thank goodness for all of the seagrass and the vegetation up there that's keeping a lot of that there. But there is another stretch of...
The seagrass really helps. And you know what one of the biggest things that helped to prevent this kind of damage was? Mangrove forests. If you know what mangroves are, actually, you know what? We need mangrove appreciation. It's mangrove appreciation time. I feel like it's kind of mandatory when I'm talking about the environment. Viewer count drops to nothing because no one cares about climate change, even on the left, it seems. I'm just joking. My viewer count hasn't dropped. But I will say there is a disappointing lack of enthusiasm to watch any content I make about climate change, positive or negative. And that's worrying. It means that the apathy is even prevalent on the left. And that's bad. Bad. Because climate change is like the topic that... you have to continue to hammer into people's heads its importance constantly. It's existential of a threat, you know? One moment, chat. I'm going to show you guys a beautiful mangrove forest. Now, generally... mangrove forests don't look quite this beautiful. Actually, no. Here is literally a mangrove forest in Clearwater, Florida. Off the coast. For just a little perspective on what I'm talking about. That's some loud-ass music. I'll have to turn it down. But, like, they basically root to the bottom of the sand like the bottom of the seafloor, it's usually very shallow water. Like that's the surface right there. It's not very deep at all, and you'll see a person for scale. And their roots reach down to the bottom and connect, and they create very complex environments for lots of different animals, large and small, to reproduce. A lot of these like little coves and inlets are estuaries. Manatees love to go in here. A lot of sea turtles live and spawn here. Like these formations act as seawalls that break up the tide and prevent so much sand from getting washed out to sea. But as you can imagine, environment and habitat destruction is making these go away. It's all cyclical. These plants require clean water. Like, quite clean water. Their health is a pretty good gauge of the water's cleanliness. This is a segment, Ride the Rails. Hopefully you enjoyed your dinner. Glad to hear you're feeding yourself. Love to hear you guys are getting your food in you. So yeah, very nice little environment to dive around, I imagine. Very cool. Wait, not pro climate change? I meant stuff to stop climate change. I gotcha. The good thing is that this can all be reversed. People think about climate change like it is irreversible. It can be reversed. If we reach carbon negativity and we contribute we have ways of reversing the effects of climate change. But the fact is how expensive and difficult of a task it is predicated on how quickly we reverse the momentum towards disaster, right? We've got a lot of ways we can cool the Earth at a surprising speed, but we have no point in doing this if we haven't reduced our carbon footprint to carbon negativity. Nuclear winter's pretty quick. I mean, literally, like there's a lot of scientists proposing an idea to essentially blanket large parts of the world with like a non-toxic dust in much the same way that a volcanic eruption might, and bring about like incremental degrees of cooling over time. You have to remember that we're talking about global average temperatures, and we're looking at measures that would just cloud seeding, similar to that, not cloud seeding, but similar. Essentially, just slowly lowering the global average temperature to a ideal stable position. Probably, like what we would probably aim for is just where we were prior to the Industrial Revolution, right? Like before that, the amount of effects our burning stuff had on the atmosphere and the environment was like nothing, like actually nothing. Like when we were burning torches and doing like charcoal furnaces in like the Middle Ages, we really weren't affecting the environment much. The Earth was still quite clean.
Beach in Pinellas County that likely won't be getting the sand it desperately needs. We're talking about Sand Key. Now, this is a stretch of the beach that's from about Clearwater Pass south to North Reddington Beach. A renourishment project was scheduled for that section in 2024, but the Army Corps of Engineers may not fund it because they're asking for perpetual easements from every property owner, and that's been difficult to get. So
it's the NIMBYs. It's the NIMBYs and its landlords that are the problem here. I'm just gonna translate it to English. Basically, you have to pay a very small portion to this public works project to help improve the community. A lot of these houses are owned by landlords that live out of state and are renting them out as vacation homes and Airbnbs for massive amounts of money. When the floods come, they won't be there, so they don't care. And the NIMBYs just don't want to pay and don't give a fuck. You know, they're the boomers who think they're invincible in the world, and the laws of physics don't apply to them. The laws of immunology don't apply to them. Like they just don't care. And so they don't help to support the project. And on top of that, the government's not willing to help foot the bill because Republicans won, and also the people aren't willing to help either. And so it's just like the people living in these coastal communities want this to be paid for. They're willing to pay. But so many of the people who own these houses are willing to see them be flooded because they've already made their bag. You know, they don't care.
take a look at this map. The section in yellow is the one that I'm talking about right now. There is another stretch of the Pinellas shoreline from Sunshine Beach to Paso Grill, and I'm in the middle of that at Sunset Beach. And
This is a year ago, by the way.
Will be renourished next year because that was already budgeted. But according to Pinellas County's coastal management,
Spoiler alert, they lost the budget. It's not going to be renourished. We'll be updating on that later.
Coordinator, these beaches have taken quite a beating since the last renourishment in 2019.
Normally, this beach would be about 155 feet wide right after construction.
God.
It does equilibrate after that and change, and the beach starts to erode right away.
That's low tide.
So Dr. Bishop says there are 3 big reasons to make sure that the beaches get renourished. First, the more beach you have, the more protection you have for homes and businesses.
The beach is the first, well, actually, no. The reefs are the first line of protection. Reefs and mangrove forests and sandbars are the first line of protection from the ocean to the coast. And then the beach. And then, like, at that point, it's plant life. And maybe an artificially constructed seawall is really all you've got to keep the roaring, raging sea from sweeping away, like, what was once a quiet, like, well-functioning town or neighborhood. And this is literally a strip of land, by the way. Let me rewind to show you the map that is quite relevant to demonstrate what I'm talking about here. There are probably hundreds of thousands of people living in these, like, little island canal systems that look similar to, like, what Dubai has going on, and not to mention along the coast here and well into these bays and coves. These are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people living in this area that are going to experience severe flooding in, like, the near future. Like, we're going to see the Twitter trend, millions homeless in Florida. Like, it's going to happen. Like, Twitter will still be around, which really shows you how soon it's going to be. The majority of evangelicals are baby boomers, older Gen Xers. Yeah, the people living on this property, to be fair, a lot of the people who can own this property, very old, very wealthy, or very young and wealthy Nepo babies. How long until Florida just dissolves into the ocean like a sugar cube in hot coffee? You're not too far off from that being what would happen, considering the bedrock is limestone, and that's exactly what happens to limestone and water. It literally dissolves.
Another stretch of the Pinellas shoreline from Sunshine Beach to Paso Grill, and I'm in the middle of that at Sunset Beach. And it will be renourished next year because that was already budgeted. But according to Pinellas County's coastal management coordinator,
is Mar-a-Lago in the path of destruction? Yes.
These beaches have taken quite a beating since the last renourishment in 2019.
Normally, this beach would be...
So Dr. Bishop says there are 3 big reasons to make sure that the beaches get renourished. First, the more beach you have, the more protection you have for homes and businesses. Second, it helps the environment. When you have a healthy shoreline and a healthy beachfront,
very true. Arizona, another boomer right-wing enclave, is getting to be actually unlivable. It might be nice to see that, like, Republicans, while also dying off just in a general cultural trend kind of way, they're also going to make their fundamental strongholds where they like to congregate in the most high concentrated numbers into actual unlivable hellholes that, like, they literally might, like, they might wake up swept out to sea overnight with, like, no expectation because they'll just not, they don't care. They won't go out and buy sandbags. When you live in Florida and a hurricane's coming, what, every single area, like grocery stores, fire stations, anywhere that you could think of that would realistically do this, is selling, for pretty cheap too, sandbags. Empty ones and full ones. And they've got big trucks of sand for you to fill the bags with if you want to do it there. And the reason they do this is because people need to, like, especially these days, need to sandbag around their houses, especially around their doors and their windows and, like, the cracks of their doors, vents, certain, just areas like that. Because water will get in when hurricanes come. The tide will come. If it's a full moon, the tide will be higher than usual. Storm surge is a beast. It's awful. If my mom's watching the stream right now and she wants to provide a little bit of anecdotal example evidence of what happened to our family We lived on the Florida coast for a while, and in 2016, a tropical storm, it was a hurricane, but it fizzled down to a tropical storm by the time it hit our area, called Tropical Storm Hermine, hit our area overnight, and I woke up to my mom panicking because water was coming in from under every door. And so I had to get up, and my first immediate job was to collect every electronic I could and get it onto high ground, up onto the high countertops in the kitchen, and start bagging it up in trash bags. We had small dogs. This was terrifying. We dared to open the front door for just a second and go outside with everything to try and load into the car and try to leave the area. The tailpipe was covered. We immediately realized we couldn't and had to go back in. At this point, we had shin-deep water in the house. We had to, shore up the highest elevation room just by a little bit that was the least flooded with water bottles and gallon jugs and, try to keep the water out as much as possible and shut as many doors as possible and turn off the power with the breakers so we don't get electrocuted, even though the power was already out. And then we had to get the couch towels and cover the couch and towels and all the dry blankets we could so we'd have a dry place to be, because this is sewage water and shitty, disgusting, turbid canal water, and we had to sleep on this couch, just sitting up, barely sleeping, really. We didn't sleep. We'd use the bathroom in a bucket, and when morning came, they had the Coast Guard going down the street in boats, in little inflatable dinghy boats. And they came up to our window, and they just they went boop, 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 boop on the window, and they were like, hey, do you need help? And it's is the water receding? And they're like, yeah, it's receding, but do you want out? And we're like, we'll ride out the water receding. We got a lot of stuff to deal with here. And they're like, okay. And so eventually it all receded, and we had to get rid of a lot of our stuff. My mom might have a picture of the pile. Yeah, if you're watching and you could provide that picture, Mom, I would really appreciate it. I'm sure it's on Facebook or something.
Sea turtles can nest. Seabirds have places to go. Finally, the big one, tourism. The beaches are what keep people coming here from all over the world. Dr. Bishop says investing just $25 million in beach nourishment can equate to billions of dollars in tourism. So it is a constant process along some of these Pinellas beaches. They need to redo this nourishment every 4 to 6 years. And right now, the nourishment plans for those beaches north of here, all along Sand Key, that's been put on hold until they can get that easement or until they can figure out exactly what to do to get it back in the budget. But Grant, we talked quite a bit about this. I just assumed maybe the waves were hitting the beach, kind of washing some of the sand away, but you say it's much more about the size of the waves.
Yeah, Jenny, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we see erosion along our beaches. It's not just the huge waves, but sometimes it's the direction that those waves come in. And typically when we look at tropical systems, that's where we're going to see.
There's a million different factors that are impacting this that are just elevating the problem that you wouldn't even consider. I want you to look at all these little strips. You see how much of the especially west coast of Florida is strips of land, these little keys that connect to the land and are now long highways with lots of hotels and houses and beachfront property along all of them. This isn't a very high detail map. If you had a real high detail map, you could see how extensive these mazes of canals are all along the west coast. It goes out all the way through the Panhandle too. You can see it up here. All of this is going to be the first to go. They're barrier islands, yeah. They're the first to go.
Some of the biggest erosion, and we might see
and millions of people live on these barrier islands, I would guess. I don't know the exact populations, but I've been to these areas, and the houses at this point, the density is high, and they are big places, big high-rise condos.
Tropical system that's going to stay off our coast, maybe it tracks to the north. We're oh, we spared it. We're not going to get as much of an impact, but that southerly flow that comes on the eastern side of a tropical system produces what we call a longshore current, and that current that moves parallel to the shore is responsible for moving large amounts of sediment and sand up along our beaches. Let me explain what happens here. And this happened with Ada back in 2019.
I like that reference, Mr. Inedible.
2020. It happened with Elsa just last year as well. We had this parallel flow to our coast, and that produces wave action that comes onto our beaches at an angle. See how those beaches or those waves come onto the beach from the angle there? And what that does is it produces what we call swash. It picks up sand and then it displaces it and moves it a little farther up along the coast. You have that happen repeatedly up along the coast. You get more and more of those angled waves that come up. The swash produces that movement of the sand, and then it pushes back into the ocean, and then we get another push of sand, and it continues to do that over and over and over again. And ultimately, it displaces the sand and moves it way up the coast. And that's what we call a longshore drift. So not only is it producing erosion, but it's moving a whole bunch of sand and putting it into a place where we maybe don't want it, and obviously stealing that sand from beaches a little bit farther to the south. So this is just one way that we see this erosion occur along the beach, and ultimately we need to nourish it. We need to get it back in place and kind of smooth and spread everything out. So it's more than just big waves. It's more than just putting sand back onto the beach, but it's putting it back where it needs to be in an even place.
Welcome back to Brightside.
So yeah, that was a year ago. Things were looking somewhat hopeful at the very least, because there were some plans and funding for a program to replenish the beaches. Well, let me give you guys an update. And this isn't even super up to date, by the way. This is from 4 months ago, but apparently...
You see behind me...
Apparently, there is some news coming out more recently, though there's not a lot covering it yet, that, like, all these programs are getting defunded. Like, unless something changes, and that would be a Ron DeSantis decision, I'll give you 3 guesses what he's going to do about this. It's just going to be a continuous erosion of the beaches. Like, I genuinely think if something's not done in the next 5 years, we're going to see houses in Florida getting swept out to sea being posted on Twitter and YouTube.
You see behind me here now is about 1 or 2% of the sand that was originally here just a month ago when...
Wow, look at that. Just right up against the house. And it's going to, like, literally, like, eat from out... It's going to eat right out from under these condos, too. Like, it's going to sweep everything from around the foundation and maybe what's under the foundation out, like, to sea. Like, they're going to float away like the, like, sea version of up. Like, when I say it's going to cause, like, landslides, I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. And we have video of what happens, too. If you want to see, like, what the worst-case scenario is, it's not an imaginary thing. Climate change has caused this to happen. Town landslides into sea. I don't think anybody died here. This is in Norway. This was fucking crazy. But this could very well be the future of Florida's coasts, especially these very thin... And everything's, like, buried halfway under the mud now. Because the water's receding and leaving just this flat, muddy plain that everything's buried under because the sediment has settled. God. That's the thing. It won't just leave everything underwater. Chances are it'll just leave everything buried in sand. It'll look literally post-apocalyptic when it's over. Because it'll be a great big tide that'll come in. That'll be temporary. That'll drag everything out to sea and it'll recede back to how things were before the storm. And there'll just be a massive mile-wide stretch of sand and buried houses and cars. That is what will happen. Mark my words. Clip me now. You know how I am about predicting shit. I've seen the, like, predictions, the 3D, like, simulations of what will happen. And I've also seen right there what actually happens when this occurs. That is what will happen here. Look how bad it is getting. This is where the water eats away at the coastline when the tide gets high. That is like the bottom balcony there of a house. You can see, like, there's another floor there behind this dune with a whole, like this is a built up little berm. Once this goes away, I think it's just straight up, like, first floor is flooded. It's bad, guys. It's soon.
County came in and put sand here all along the beaches.
Tons of sand brought in to replenish beaches in Pinellas County last month. already washing away. Good evening, everyone. I'm Josh Benson.
And I'm Jennifer Lee. Thank you for joining us. Last night's storm caused some major erosion to an area hard hit by Hurricane Idalia. We're talking about Sunset Beach on Treasure Island. News Channel 8's Brittany Muller joins us live from Treasure Island right now. Brittany, that's not a huge piece of beach anyway to begin with, and it's just suffered so much erosion in the last several months.
I recognize that building.
Right, and you can see that erosion. Good evening, Jen and Josh. You can see it. This is not only from last night, but also the storm back in December. Pinellas County says the dunes did their job in providing protection.
I don't know how long it's going to last, you know?
Yeah, this is smart. They're planting seagrass. They're planting the seagrass along the beach. Yeah, I think this is Treasure Island. Did they get the gold before the storm hit? No, it's just I don't know if there's like a reason behind the name, but it's a really popular vacation spot. My mom took me to Treasure Island and Honeymoon Island a lot as a kid. Those were really good beaches when I was younger.
No clue, but I'm glad what they did. They did a great job, and hopefully Mother Nature won't tear it down too quick.
Only 2 months, and Mother Nature has already eroded the dunes.
So we've lost in the last 2 storms basically all of the beach. Everything that the county brought in is unfortunately now gone.
Pinellas County launched an emergency restoration project after Hurricane Idalia, placing more than 232,000 cubic yards of sand.
The December storm was heartbreaking.
What you predicted already happened to some barrier islands? Well, it's not. I didn't predict anything. I just said this is what happens. You know, it's like, yeah, it's already happening. Like this isn't a. It's coming, guys. It's coming. Get scared. It's coming. It's happening, guys. You better watch because it's happening. There's no like ignoring it doesn't change that it is actually currently happening, and like maybe this hurricane season, we see the coast of Florida get wiped away. At least a good part of it. It could happen this October. That's when it starts. Hurricane season starts this October. So we'll see how things go.
For us, we put so much effort into these dunes and into, you know, getting the residents on board, getting the county on board, and doing this in record time.
Treasure Island City Commissioner Beth Wetzel says yesterday's storm just chipped away at the dunes even further. Beachfront property owners, including Robert Ian,
I recognize this exact stretch of beach. Those fucking
just
trees.
Chipped away at the dunes even further. Beachfront.
These things drop circular pine cones that are like little spike balls. Fuck them. I'm pretty sure they're invasive and they're imported. I know exactly where this is. There is a road right there on the other side. You go straight down and hook a left, and I stayed in a motel on a vacation once to this place. We call it the vacation from hell. Stayed in a motel just down into the road, and I believe to the left. We call it the vacation from hell. It was awful. It was awful. But I recognize not just the stretch of beach, but those fucking trees, the picnic tables that I know are right there, and I know that there's a road right there. I'm very good with directions, memory, and locations when it comes to stuff like that, and I've been here a lot of times. So yeah, Florida man moment.
Front property owners, including Robert Ianell, says dune restorations are short-term.
You just can't be bringing dump truck loads full of sand. It's the equivalent of, you know, using an eyedropper to fill a pool. It's just not going to work.
While the Army Corps of Engineers federal beach renourishment project is on hold, the question becomes how can leaders get it to move forward?
Working with the county, with the state, with our U.S. representatives and senators to try to get the Army Corps of Engineers on board.
Right now, Pinellas County is regrouping and reevaluating the beach dunes. Reporting live.
So guys, all that, so you know how I talk about, like, Florida is really attractive for tourism. Its economy is based on tourism. People wanting to come from other places to go to Florida and experience its unique environment, its nature, the amusement parks, the touristy stuff, all that. People want to go to Florida. The things that make people want to go to Florida are being destroyed by the Republicans. You would think that the amusement parks would at least be safe, right? Like those are at least like man-made, usually inland, like landlocked, climate controlled to an extent, attractions. You know, even if Florida had no nature to see, at least it's a land of amusement parks that people would visit. But Ron DeSantis and the Republicans are also attacking Disney. They call it woke, and they're trying to kick Disney out, apparently, or beat Disney. I don't know what Ron DeSantis' plan is with his whole feud with Disney. So on a multi-front, the Republicans are destroying all that makes the states that they hold worth visiting and thus worth having an economy. Like, the economies of these states are going to nosedive very soon. Like, this is going to be imminent.
Live from Sunset Beach this evening, Brittany Muller, 8 on your side.
You see behind me here now is
Oh yeah, the video restarted. Yeah, this is really worrying, guys. It's really, really worrying. Now, I don't want to leave you guys completely doomer, though. I don't want to leave you guys completely doomer. Are you guys familiar with the restoration projects that have been happening in Florida? Insider might not be copyrighted. We'll see how much of this we can get away with playing. This is from a year ago. I've honestly thought about, if I go to Florida and I've got like a good camera and like money for like traveling around and doing stuff, I would honestly love to do a video showcasing this program, because they like welcome volunteers to come take basic scuba training and help them. They need hands. And they absolutely love publicity. So, you know, I feel like it would be really cool to do a video, like, showcasing this coral restoration project. This is off the coast of, I'm guessing, either Clearwater or Miami, if I were to guess. But we'll see. These are coral farms. Might be the Keys.
The Florida Reef Tract is the U.S.'s only barrier reef system. It's about 300 miles long. And what we saw over the last few days.
This stuff breaks up the waves, current and turbid, and like current and waves and all that shit, storm surge, and helps to prevent massive amounts of water from hitting the coast directly and washing things out to sea. This is our first line of defense against flooding and big storms and tidal waves and stuff.
Decades is an incredible decline in coral cover. What
Wait,
we're
that's
looking
well off
at
the
is the
coast of
potential loss of an
Keys
entire
or Miami.
ecosystem.
Wow, that's a dead reef. What you're seeing here is what a dead reef looks like.
We've never experienced.
This is probably heat. From what I understand of like what kills coral and how it looks when it dies a certain way, this was because of heat. The temperature in this water got too high for the coral to survive in.
Human history, and I don't think anyone wants to find out what that would mean if we had a complete collapse of our coral reef ecosystems. My name is Jessica Levy, and I am the Director of Restoration Strategy for the Coral Restoration Foundation. The Coral Restoration Foundation is a non-for-profit headquartered in the Florida Keys. So here we are in one of Coral Restoration Foundation's offshore coral nurseries. It's about 1.5 acres wide. It's the largest offshore coral nursery.
Just a really nice, shallow, sandy area, really clear water, ideal temperature, probably due to currents, like pushing nice, clean, cold water from deeper areas of the ocean to keep it from getting too hot and killing the coral. Basically finding a nice area where the coral can survive, and they're doing everything they can to propagate it at lightning speeds, and just boosting the population of coral as much as possible, not letting it die. There are also private coral traders. There's a whole private coral trading industry, and when you hear about it, when you think about it, it sounds really evil and awful. It's actually really ethical and based. Some countries ban it, but genuinely, it seems like that's probably a bad thing. A lot of people, like there's people on YouTube who have these massive like bins and trays of these exotic, beautiful corals that they're growing and keeping in like the ideal conditions. So they're reaching like the peak health possibility of these corals. So they're just breeding these healthy specimens in a very controlled environment. And they're obviously mostly for like aquariums and stuff, but they're also preserving these species and these like populations. And there are like probably trillions of different species of coral, to be honest. Like you'll look at two pieces of coral that are identical and it's like, oh no, those are actually completely different species. They're actually like, you can breed coral and get like tons of different hybrids. It's like weed. Like coral is like weed. It's like how many different types of weed are there? Well, there's 5 more since you asked me the question. So, like, what do you want me to answer with?
In the world, and it's a spectacular site to visit. The restoration process starts, in the very original sense, with collections of natural corals. These are corals that are at risk to some event, so we actually go out to our local reefs and harvest from them. And instead of return visits to the wild, we use that coral in a nursery system where that original collection is allowed to grow over time, and as it grows, you take subsequent cuttings from that original collection and you produce more and more corals.
Oh, on purpose,
the main
I'm
structure that CRF uses and pioneered is what's known as the coral tree. It's a very simple structure that floats in the water column. It's made of PVC and fiberglass. In our nurseries in particular, we have upwards of 500 of these coral structures.
That is a fucking amazing day, dude. The day that that 4 manta rays, or no, those are spotted eagle rays. The day that 4 spotted eagle rays swim past you while you're helping to restore coral. My God, that is the life. These are happy people doing this, by the way. Like, if you want to like take a wild guess at the mental state of the people doing this, they have their mental health is like beyond 100% health, okay? Like, they are the happiest people you'll ever meet are the people that you meet doing like volunteer work like this. I promise you. If you want to meet like people that are like so happy that it makes you happy to be around them, volunteer for stuff like this and you'll meet them.
And the corals are actually suspended on them.
Doing something like this used to be my dream job. This isn't even like you can volunteer. Like this is they want people. They're welcoming people. If you want to do this, they want you, you know?
Those structures themselves. So you'll see our divers swimming through this forest of coral trees. Some of the main activities that they're likely to do in a nursery is cleaning, removing algae and biofouls and any other organisms that have kind of grown on those structures and might compete with that coral for living space. We use very simple materials to work on our trees. We use wire brushes or a chisel to clean the structures themselves. We use clippers to actually cut the coral or cut the monofilament line that the coral is suspended from the tree with. While you can work pretty heavy-handed with the trees.
This started as like a piece this big. They put a piece this big stuck to a little bit here, and it's ballooned out to be this now. They could potentially just cut this up into like 100 new corals that could grow this big. That's the nice thing about coral. It's a very relatively fast process to restore the coral reefs. For most corals, not all of them. There are many that are like ancient growers, but a lot of corals can be restored. Entire reefs can be restored in like a manner of like 5 to 10 years if we get the ocean situation under control. And we're on a good path to that, you know? There's a lot of initiatives set out to clean up the garbage patches and across the ocean. A lot of attention brought to microplastics, which are just a generally massive problem for all of the ocean. I mean, we've all got microplastics in our balls. Coral, we're all infected. We all have it. We all have microplastics in our balls, every last one of us. That's what Dr. Jenner told me at the CDC. Coral. Yeah. It's pretty rough. It's pretty rough. But thankfully there's a pretty big push to solve this, and Biden with his big like shutting down the coal industry initiative is a big step in the right direction. Because obviously a lot of the environment and its health starts in the atmosphere and the temperatures of the atmosphere and the ocean. A lot of this is ocean temperature we need to lower, and doing that is what's going to help this. So yeah, it's not all doom and gloom. If you just let yourself succumb to the doomerism, then it really is all hopeless. Do not act like it's hopeless. There are people out there that are hopeful, and they're actively fighting to preserve these things, and they will continue to do so. In fact, actually, let me show you something. Coolest coral collection ever. I think this should yield the result I'm looking for. Yeah. So here's a look at just one guy who's a private coral breeder. And take a look at the stuff that just dudes who live in, like, condos with lots of fish tanks are doing to preserve these species. Hey, Bal. We're talking about climate change and restoring, like, reefs and coral. You probably have to wear, like, sunscreen and protective eyewear when you're in here if you're smart, because this is UV
hey guys,
light.
How are you? This is Josh. Come see my solar garden.
Look at that. There are little fish in there, too. It's so well organized. He's got that ADHD, like, I need to shuffle these around so they are in a perfectly pleasing to the eye pattern. These can't be disorganized. And there's, like, sheets and trays. You can see, if you look beneath, there's more coral underneath this, like, grating. There's more. There's layers and layers and layers of coral on top of each other. Just perfectly spaced apart. Wow. Look, yeah, the color, okay. These corals are pretty vibrant, like if you were looking at them in the water through sunlight, but these are UV lights, black light shining on them, and coral, many corals naturally glow under a black light, many different colors, so the reason why they look like this, so vibrant and beautiful, is because of the UV lights. It's why a lot of aquariums use UV lights, because they'll have corals that glow like this, and it just adds to the beauty of it. But under sunlight, they won't be quite this vibrant. But, you know, they are quite beautiful. This is what they look like under UV light. And they're very healthy, too. This is perfectly clean water that is very well maintained that they're in. So, like, they're very vibrant and colorful. There's no, like, dirtiness to the water affecting, like, what color they are. They're extremely healthy specimens. There are tens of thousands, if not more, of people with setups like this, breeding coral like this non-stop, selling it to people, which are groups starting their own coral breeding setups, which is getting to be a really popular trend as, you know, climate activism and wanting to preserve the coral reefs gets to be popular, because one day they're going to be like, hey, oi, we got everything needed to restore the Great Barrier Reefs, but there are 100,000 species of coral that are practically extinct. If anybody has a sample of these coral, we need them. We need them out here, please. And all the breeders are like, I might be your guy. I've got 500 different colored varieties of this species that you think is extinct. And next thing we know, we're breeding them in mass, and then we've got tons of specimens to seed, and we can absolutely restore the world and the environment to a state similar to that of before humans destroyed it. Do not fall into doomerism. You have to care. The only way we can come back from this, the way we can save our planet, is to care. You cannot stop caring. Do not become apathetic, please. And of course, volunteer. There are ways you can help that are actually very self-fulfilling. Zan, as an avid fish keeper and hobbyist, this fills me with such joy seeing you cover this topic. I'm happy to hear that, Sir Goose. This is also one of my special interests, to be honest. But yeah, thank you so much. I'm glad to hear you like this segment. And if you did as well, anyone else watching, please consider dropping a like. Every single thumbs up, no matter when, where, or what you're watching, really helps the channel a lot, basically boosting my content in the algorithm out to far more people, so I really, really do appreciate it. And of course, if you haven't already, consider subscribing and ringing the bell icon so YouTube tells you when I go live or upload a new video. Follow my social medias, linked down below to see more from me. And of course, if you want to support me financially directly to help pay my bills, my rent, and help to raise money for the quail content that I'm going to be doing quite soon. It's still a little nippy, and I still need to raise a bit more money, but I'm going to be getting a new camera, a quail coop, I already got the quail food, and a quail incubator, and we are going to be popping off. It's going to be great. I'm excited for the content. Probably daily quail vlogs, to be honest, because, I mean, they're going to exist every day there in their coop, and they're going to need their eggs harvested, and their eggs harvested, and they're going to be taken care of and all that. So yeah, probably daily quail vlogs. I hope you guys are excited for that. Might be able to push us to 4 uploads a day, who knows. So if you want to donate for that, consider contributing. I really do appreciate it. Speaking of donors, I'm going to get to donos now. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.